Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. I am the Reverend Florence Caplow, the minister of this congregation, and I am so glad that you have joined us on this Sunday, the last Sunday of 2020, one of the most unforgettable years, at least of my lifetime. In this service, I want to explore 2020 in all of its complexity and also help us all turn towards the coming year. I read a quote in a news article this week that I just really expressed what I'm hoping that we can do in this service, which is, let's face it, in 2020, any laugh you can emit, no matter how fleeting, is a small but precious victory. I am not trying to make light of the tremendous sorrows of this year, sorrows and tragedies. Somehow I want to make a space in all of our hearts big enough for it all, for the tragedies, for the blessings, which you'll hear more about from Teresa Benson later in the service, for the just helpless laughter at how bad it's been, for whatever it is that may be in your heart in response to this year. I'd like to give you an opportunity to let it go. Another quote that struck me quite vividly was from a news report about halfway through the year, after a tornado had hit in the suburbs of Chicago. Another resident said he came out to check the neighborhood and found his car in half. And what was his response? "I think because 2020, said resident Tom Malinowski, I think you know what? It has prepared us for stuff like this." Before we begin, however, just as we do in all of our services, I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement, recognizing that this Sunday, as we do on every Sunday, we gather on Indigenous land. And there'll be a moment of silence after the acknowledgement, followed by our prelude. We recognize and acknowledge that we gather today on Indigenous land, taken through deception, coercion, and violence. We acknowledge the continued displacement and oppression of Native peoples and honor their commitments to survival, identity, and the protection of our world. Thank you. While Juan Camacho plays our prelude, I'd like to invite you to find a piece of paper or a piece of paper towel, even a piece of toilet paper, and a pen or pencil, and consider what you would like to let go of from 2020. Your own very personal list of what you'd like to shed, like a snake sheds its skin, in order to come more fully into 2021. And now please enjoy Let It Go. Our chalice lighting this morning is a special New Year's chalice lighting. We in Unitarian Universalist congregations light a flaming chalice to begin our sacred time together. If you have a candle or a chalice that you'd like to light with me, please find it now. As I say these words, which you'll see on your screen, you can join me with these words by Deborah Burrell. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries for today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace. And our chalice is now lit, as it is lit in Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world. I've been thinking about this service for a while, in between thinking about the Christmas Eve service, and just how I would find a way to talk about this year. And then I was talking with my sister the other day, who lives part of the year in Santa Fe. And she was telling me about a very particular Santa Fe tradition. And as soon as I heard it, I thought, I have to tell them about this. Although I've spent a lot of time in Santa Fe myself, I'd never heard of this particular tradition. Maybe you haven't either. So in Santa Fe, in September, not at the end of the year, but still very, very relevant for us, there is a ceremony that happens that's happened for almost 100 years. Although it's not a traditional New Mexican ceremony. It was developed by one of the many artists and writers that have gathered in that part of the world over the last century or so. And it's the burning of zozobra. And zozobra has an entirely made up mythology associated with him. But let me just tell you a little bit about the burning. So every September, the people of Santa Fe erect what is now a 50-foot high figure, kind of like Burning Man, a huge man. And they put into him all the yucky stuff from the previous year, everything from tax collection paperwork to parking tickets, whatever it is, all goes inside this huge figure. And then they burn him spectacularly. I want to just share a little bit of the story of zozobra. Again, a total myth, created myth, but just to give you a flavor of it. So zozobra is a monster who lives in the hills outside Santa Fe. And he is reborn annually because of our own nefarious deeds throughout the year. The city leaders lure zozobra out of the hills by throwing a huge fiesta in his honor. And because he is so filled with ego, he is convinced, even though this happens every year, that this time he will truly be honored. And so he also realizes that this is his best opportunity to invade the middle of town, which is his deepest longing, to destroy all hope and happiness, and to rob the city of its most precious possession, which is hope. He appears in the plaza at the appointed hour, dressed in his finest black tie attire. While the people are gathering, he's already getting angry because he's not being properly honored. Once the people have gathered, he casts a spell over the children. and turns them into these little agents of doom, his minions, who are called the Gloomies. And the Gloomies are ordered by Zozobra to defend him, because he's now figured out that this party is really not in his honor. And they begin to enact his evil plans, but a brave group of townspeople come with light. They come with torches, and the light dispels the spell over the Gloomies, and they are restored to their true form as children, howling in fury. And if you go online and look for images of Zozobra, you will hear him howling in fury and waving his arms. He renews his attacks, but a fire dancer climbs up the steps to where he is, and the fire dancer represents all our collective energies and love and hope for the future, dreams, faith in this case, Santa Fe's citizens. And so the fire spirit battles Zozobra, and of course, because this is a myth, he wins, or she wins, and Zozobra begins to burn. And as Zozobra burns, everyone cheers, and all of those troubles are released into the air. I'd like to do something a little bit like that with us today around our own things that we might want to let go of. Over the last few days, I had sent out a link where people could write down the 3 things that they wanted most to let go of. And a few of you did this, and I have the words that you chose. And a little while later, we are going to have a filmed burning of these words. But again, hopefully you have your piece of paper, whatever it might be, and something to write on that paper with. And you too can participate at home and find your own way of disposing of these things that you would like to be free of. But again, I just want to say a little bit about working with the difficulties of this year. I do think that 2020 has been an extraordinarily difficult year. However, I do think it's important to remember that there are some extraordinary changes that have happened in 2020. For one thing, we elected our first Black woman vice president, who is also of East Indian descent. And this is groundbreaking for our country. This is huge. So many people came together to support each other, to care for one another, and to change our lives radically in order to protect one another during the pandemic. And this was right alongside all the things that were not going well for people all over the world and for us here in America. Someone shared with me some great words by Anne Lamott that I'd like to share with you, that I think captures one way of working with the difficulties of this time. And it's really lovely. Life wants to keep reminding us of its sacred self, but we have to open our eyes and hearts. Yes, our hair looks like hell, and we're out of shape, and dislike our mate, and shouldn't have children, but God, what a sunset. And I so appreciate the roof over my head. There is an exuberant patch of poppies and weeds outside in the rocky dirt. The poppies are lanterns, light over darkness, good over evil. Light your lantern with self-love. Shine. We can't feel many people's warm skin, but we have the scarf that Emmy knit, the cap Granddad left us, our first toolbox that an uncle assembled for our 8th birthday, even though we were a girl. These are as sacred as the statues and tapestries we would see in mosques, temples, sendos, ashrams. We leave them around to remember love. It goes without saying that we put up photos of the people we love and miss. The connection is so deep, deeper than the physical and contact, so much deeper than on the plane of talk. It is in the fullness of spirit, the capillary system, the ether of breath and memories. It also goes without saying that we play our holy music, hymns, kirtans, klezmer, aretha, or listen to a wind chime, breezes made visible. Then, drum roll, we pick up the phone or log on to Zoom, and by prearrangement on Kwanzaa, New Year's Eve, as Shabbat starts, or the solstice, we reach out. We say, "Hey, you." As we used to bring our best selves to weddings and funerals, we bring them now to what we can still attend by phone or by walks in the neighborhood, masked, waving. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Teresa Benson. I had sent out a little note and video to our worship associates to see if anybody was willing to write 2020 on a piece of toilet paper and flush it, which I had seen a video of another UU minister doing. You, by the way, at home are welcome to do this if that would be cathartic for you. And none of the worship associates took me up on this, but Teresa wrote back and said, I'm kind of struggling because this has been an amazing year for me, as you will hear in a moment. And she said, it's challenging to have such an incredible year personally when there is so much difficulty in the wider world. And so I asked if she would share this with us because, again, I'm inviting us all, including myself, to hold the paradoxes, the many, many strange flavors of this year, like a giant stew of unknown origins. And one of them is the spice of blessings. And I think almost no matter how our year has been, there have been blessings. So please enjoy Teresa's words of blessing before we go on to our own personal zozobra fire ceremony.
When Reverend Florence sent out a call for people to videotape themselves flushing 2020 down the toilet, I felt a little bit of a pinch, mainly because this was a really good year for me. It started out with me having the opportunity to marry my soulmate, the love of my life, Scott Godlew, and our wedding was so magical. We had the opportunity to do that in February and then go to Puerto Rico for our honeymoon. And I have to say it was one of the most magical experiences. And it was incredibly meaningful for us, but also we would have never imagined that we were going to be in lockdown in March. And so the timing was lucky, I guess. It was really incredible. And although it feels like we got married 20 years ago because the pandemic has made everything seem much longer, I've enjoyed every moment with Scott this year. I also feel like I had an opportunity to do trainings in some very important programs that I wanted to study but was never able to because it required me to travel and I had to come up with the time off as well as the financial resources to travel. But Zoom made it possible for me to be able to do a number of trainings that enhanced my skills as a psychologist. And then with the extra downtime and so much time around the house, Scott and I had the opportunity to build a labyrinth in the backyard and then start on a DIY kitchen remodel, which is nearly finished. And so there's been so many incredible blessings this year for me and I think for Scott. And I feel really humble I also feel so grateful to have had this opportunity. I also recognize how challenging this year has been for so many. I only have to see the struggles that my children are going through to recognize how difficult this year has been. Not to mention the ongoing political tensions that have occurred over the year, the children still in cages on the border, the needless number of Black lives who've been murdered this year, and all the needless suffering and pain that has resulted from the COVID pandemic. It's really humbling to sit with all of that suffering and pain, knowing how blessed I have been this year. And I think that's one of the big paradoxes for me, is how does a person sit with so much suffering, so much pain in the midst of experiencing so much personal blessing? There's a tension there of having to hold the pain and suffering of others while feeling so much gratitude for the blessings that have been bestowed upon me.
In a moment, I am going to go outside. I have lit a fire in a rather dramatic little old cauldron that I own, and I'm going to burn the words that were sent to me in preparation for this service. I just want to say that, of course, this does not represent everything that could be burned. And so if you have your little piece of paper or toilet paper or whatever it might be, this is your opportunity to decide what you might want to do with it. I do not suggest burning inside. You could go outside after the service. You could flush it down the toilet as long as it's something that is flushable. You could bury it in the garden. You could put it deep, deep, deep in your trash, or if you have a home altar, you could put it on your altar, just to acknowledge that no matter what it might be, this was your life. This was part of your life in 2020. And with that, please follow me outside for our burning. Each Sunday, when we gather together, we bring the joys and sorrows of our personal lives to our time together. We bring what we say in Zen are the 10,000 joys and sorrows. And so now I'd like you to bring those to mind as we play our blessing song. You can let it wash over you, you can sing along. This service is pre-recorded, so unfortunately we won't be able to have you send in your joys and sorrows. But if you send them anyway to joysandsorrows@uucuc.org, we will make sure that they're published in the e-news so that you can share what's happening in your life with the wider community if you wish. But meanwhile, please rest in our blessing song. We have one joy for the day from Kathy Ritchie. I was told a few months ago that a Dallas-based website for which I created and have written a monthly arts column for over 5 years was in danger of folding. But earlier this week, I learned that the website, and thus my writing gig, will indeed survive. I am thrilled and relieved. It's the best combination Christmas and January birthday present I could have received. So happy for you, Kathy. And I know there are many, many other unspoken joys and sorrows this morning. Bring those to mind. Consider all the many who are listening this morning and all those across the world carrying joys and sorrows of their own as we have a few moments of prayer, reflection, and meditation with the beautiful music played by Juan Camacho. We, as Unitarian Universalists, affirm and acknowledge that we are part of the interconnected web of all things, of all life. Our connections with each other, our connections with the wider community, and our connections with the whole world. At this time in our Sunday services, we acknowledge and bring to life those connections. Each December, our shared offering is shared with our Unitarian partner churches in Transylvania and in northern India. These are relationships of many, many years, and there are ties of friendship and support and connection that reach between us and these far-flung Unitarians. For them, like for us, this has been a difficult year, so I hope you consider giving generously. There's also an opportunity to continue to give to our Unitarian Universalist Utility Fund, which we began on Christmas Eve, and that opportunity will continue over the next few months. Our offering will now be received. Well, we have now done our best to say goodbye to 2020. I also have to acknowledge that there was one word that was quite prominent in the list that people sent in to me ahead of time to be burnt that I chose not to burn. And it's somebody's name. I think we probably all know what that name is. And I just felt that because of our first principle of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, even recognizing the tremendous damage that has been done by this person, that I could not throw his name on the fire. But I do want to acknowledge that that name was there. Deep breath. Hopefully you found a good place for your own list. And now let's turn towards 2021. We know that many of those words I burnt will still be with us in 2021. Racism, for instance. Disregard. And so, in a way, what the turning towards the new year is a return to our commitments as Unitarian Universalists to work to make this world a place of goodness for all. And I know that's a tall order. And that's why we get a new chance every year. I came across some writing that I had saved from a Facebook post, and unfortunately, I don't know the name of the person who wrote it, and it's from a few years ago. But I felt like, oh, this is pretty relevant for us this year. So I thought I'd share some of this with you. It's about New Year's resolutions. Dear ones, perhaps we should all begin this new year not with brand new resolutions, but with a giant gesture of self-forgiveness for all the resolutions of the past that we never kept. Let us forgive ourselves for all the things we ever tried to do but didn't finish. Let us forgive ourselves for the times we sabotaged our own best intentions. Let us forgive ourselves for the pile of manuscript pages sitting in the bottom of our desk drawer that we never quite figured out how to make into a novel. Let us forgive ourselves for the daily meditation practice that we still have not cultivated. Let us forgive ourselves for not being able to stop effing swearing in front of the kids. Let us forgive ourselves for letting another year pass in which we did not learn French or read Ulysses or stop eating sugar. Let us forgive ourselves for all the times we tried to do something of magnitude but just couldn't seem to get around to it. But most of all, let us never let our failures, embarrassments, and shortcomings stop us from trying again. Are you ashamed of trying again because you feel like, well, you screwed up last time? Do you think you are out of chances in which to try again? Trust me, you are not out of chances in which to try again. Do you know how many chances you get to try again? All of them, all of the chances, forever. Today and tomorrow and this year and next year and all the tomorrows to come. The chances never run out as long as we are still here. So let's all forgive ourselves and then not be afraid to start over. Remember, we are all just beginners, and we will probably all die beginners. But the only way a beginner can ever have a chance of advancement is by continuing to try. This is our year, you guys. We can do it. Or maybe this isn't our year, and maybe we can't do it. But that's okay too. Let's try again just for the hay of it. Because seriously, what else are we going to do with our time? All of which to say, I'm really going after it this year. You guys, again, onward. So whatever it is that matters to you, you have a chance today, tomorrow, the day after, onward as long as we are alive. And I'm just sending a huge New Year's blessing to all of you. That in this year, again, whatever the circumstances might be in our lives, that it's a year of opening your heart, of caring more, of finding your ground and your courage and your strength, of loving ever more deeply, of truly living what most matters to you. This is my blessing.
This reading is a poem titled For the New Year, 1981, and it comes to us from 20th century British American poet Denise Levertov. She writes, I have a small grain of hope, one small crystal that gleams clear colors out of transparency. I need more. I break off a fragment to send you. Please take this grain of hope so that mine won't shrink. Please share your fragment so that yours will grow. Only so by division will hope increase, like a clump of irises, which will cease to flower unless you distribute the clustered roots, unlikely source, clumsy and earth-covered, of grace. Here ends our reading.
Ring out wild bells to the wild, wild sky, the flying cloud, the frosty light. The year is dying in the night. Ring out wild bells and let it die. Ring out the old, ring in the new. Ring happy bells across the snow. The year is going, let it go. Ring out the false, ring in the true. Ring out the grief that saps the mind. For those that hear we see no more. Ring out the feud of rich and poor, ring in redress to humankind. Ring out false pride in place and blood, the civic slander and the spite. Ring in the love of truth and right, ring in the common love of good.
For my closing words and blessings today, I want to offer a few words from the Reverend Howard Thurman, whose writings we heard on Christmas Eve, the great theologian, poet, pastor, and civil rights activist. At the end of his book, The Mood of Christmas, he offered a few lines about New Year's, and I'd like to share them with you now. New Year's. It may mean the great discovery of the riches of another human heart and the revelation of the secret beauty of one's own. It may mean the beginning of a new kind of living because of marriage, of graduation, of one's first job. It may mean an encounter with God on the lonely road, or the hearing of one's name called high above the noise and din of surrounding traffic. And when the call is answered, the life becomes invaded by smiling energies never before released, felt, or experienced. In whatever sense, this is a new year for you. May the moment find you eager and unafraid, ready to take it by the hand with joy and with gratitude. New Year's blessings to you all. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.